The city, as vast and alive as any living creature, had its own rhythm after dark, a soft hum, a breath that echoed through alleyways, gutters, and window panes. Even long past midnight, the streets held a pulse. Elena Mercado walked alone under a web of streetlights, her headphones tucked into her coat pocket, her phone untouched. This was her time, just past 3 a.m., the hour when everything felt still yet strangely alert. The hour when New York shed its human mask. Steam curled from a nearby grate, warm and thick like breath on a cold mirror. It coiled around her legs before disappearing into the gloom behind her. She adjusted the strap on her messenger bag and crossed toward 9th and Hemlock, where the sidewalk sloped gently downward into a forgotten corner of the city. As she stepped into the crosswalk, her boot hit something unusual. Warmth. Not like the kind that comes from a cracked pipe or an overworked boiler. No, this warmth felt intentional. Alive. The concrete pulsed faintly beneath her soul, like she was standing on someone's chest and waiting for the next breath. She froze mid-step and looked down. There was no manhole. No steam vent. Just a smooth, dry patch of pavement glowing faintly beneath the flickering orange street light. She pressed the toe of her boot into it. From a soft vibration. It traveled up her leg like a tremor, not strong enough to shake her, but enough to leave a mark on her mind. Elena, she whispered to herself, trying to laugh it off. You've been up too long. But she didn't move. A strange sensation settled over her, like someone was watching from just beneath the ground. She glanced around. Empty storefronts, graffiti-tagged bus stops, and shuttered bars stared back at her. The wind whispered low between buildings, a hush with no origin. Her heart beat faster. Was it just paranoia? Still, she took a few steps back, then quickly crossed to the other side of the street. The warm spot stayed behind her, silent now, like it had tested her and let her go. But as she walked on, she couldn't help noticing that the silence had changed. There was no distant taxi engine, no hum of neon. Only the sound of her own footsteps. And the faintest breath rising from beneath the sidewalk. The next morning, Elena told herself it had been a fluke, some weird thermal spot from the subway heat below, nothing more. She'd read about that before. Cities layered like cakes, concrete and wires and steam and stories. Heat could travel strange paths. That was science. Logical. Still, as she sipped her coffee at the window of her 13th floor apartment, her eyes kept drifting toward the street far below. Pedestrians drifted past, shoulders hunched, faces dull with exhaustion. No one else seemed to notice the rhythm beneath their feet. Her landlord, Mr. Rizzo, knocked on her door around noon. A little man with stained fingers and a limp, he handed her a pink envelope with a half-hearted smile. "This came for you. Don't see many letters anymore." "No name on it?" Elena asked. He scratched at his salt and pepper beard. "Just said tenant, 13th floor. Weird, huh?" She thanked him, closed the door, and opened it. Inside was a single strip of glossy photo paper. It was an aerial shot of a city block, her block, actually, but the photo was warped, like it had been taken through heat or water. The buildings leaned slightly inward, and the sidewalk had a black smudge in the center. Upon closer inspection, the smudge was shaped like an eye. She turned the photo over. In the corner, in red ink, someone had scrawled, "Don't stand still too long. It can hear you now." Her breath caught. Her skin prickled. That night, sleep didn't come easy. The radiator in her apartment made strange rattling sounds, faster than usual, almost like a heartbeat. When she passed the bathroom, the pipes beneath the sink let out a soft gurgling chuckle that stopped the moment she flipped on the light. She tried to ignore it. She curled up under her thickest blanket, turned on a white noise machine, and closed her eyes. But just as she was drifting off, a low hum started. It wasn't from her building. It came from beneath it. Faint at first, then louder. Not mechanical. Not a pipe. A voice, impossibly deep, reverberating from far below. It didn't speak words. It was more like intention. A sound that made her bones ache with recognition. Elena sat up and whispered to the darkness, "Is someone down there?" And the humming stopped. Instantly. Her bedroom light flickered once, then held. Something was listening. Elena didn't sleep that night. By sunrise, her body ached from the tension of listening, ears tuned to every creak of floorboards, every whisper of pipes. The city that once made her feel invisible now felt like it saw her, knew her. And worse, like it was waiting for her to do something. She pushed aside the photo she'd received the day before and left for work early. She needed noise, crowds, distraction, anything to keep her from listening too closely. But as she stepped out into the street, a dull silence hugged the morning air. Fewer people than usual. No honking, no garbage trucks, no clatter of coffee carts. As she walked toward the subway, she passed Mr. Rizzo standing outside the building, scratching his head. "Everything okay?" she asked. He looked up, puzzled. "You seen George from 1303? The guy who feeds pigeons from his fire escape?" "Yeah. He never picked up his paper. And I knocked 3 times. Nothing." Elena hesitated. "Maybe he went out early?" "Nah. That guy's older than the building. Doesn't go out before 10 unless there's a fire." She said goodbye and kept walking, but her skin crawled. She took the subway, sat through her shift at the publishing office, and avoided talking too much. She kept replaying George's empty apartment in her mind. By evening, 2 more tenants had vanished. A single mom from 1306 and an old painter from 1301. No notes. No signs of struggle. Their apartments locked from the inside. Rizzo called the cops. They shrugged it off as voluntary disappearances. "People come and go," the officer said. "Especially in a place like this." But Elena couldn't accept that. She didn't know all her neighbors, but these people weren't just gone. They'd been swallowed, silently, neatly. Like the city had pressed a finge. Back in her apartment, she reviewed the photo again. The eye-shaped smudge. The message, "Don't stand still too long." That night, she moved around her apartment constantly, paced, danced, stretched, even cleaned the fridge, anything to keep from standing still. At one point, she placed her foot on the tile by the window and felt it again. Warmth. She jumped back. And then, clear as wind passing through a vent, came a soft voice, faint but chilling. 3. Gone. Still. Yours, soon. She clutched the windowsill. The lights flickered. Her reflection in the glass rippled, as though seen through water. She whispered, "What are you?" A long silence. Then a breath rose from the floor, hot and close, like something just beneath the tile was leaning in. Home. The next morning, Elena's eyes were bloodshot, her limbs leaden with exhaustion. She didn't bother calling in sick. Work didn't matter. Not now. Instead, she pulled out a city map from an old guidebook tucked in her bookshelf, spread it across her kitchen table, and began to mark. Her first, the spot on 9th and Hemlock where she'd felt the pulsing sidewalk. Then her apartment. Then the last known locations of her vanished neighbors. Using a ruler, she connected the dots. At first, it meant nothing. But then she noticed something. A pattern, concentric rings. Like ripples in a pond, with her apartment complex at the center. The locations weren't random. The disappearances had moved inward, closing in. And now, the epicenter was her. She grabbed her pen and added more dots, places she had passed in recent days where the ground had felt warm, where the air seemed to breathe. There were more than she remembered. Side alleys. Subway entrances. Park benches. Even one right beneath the deli she went to every Thursday. The city had pressure points. Or maybe feeding points. She circled them in red. Just then, something hard hit the floor outside her door. She opened it slowly, cautiously. A newspaper lay face down, but it wasn't today's edition. It was from 5 days ago. The headline was strange. Midtown sinkhole, authorities blame old infrastructure. Elena flipped to the article. The hole had opened near 10th Avenue, only blocks from her. No injuries. A few cracked foundations. But the thing that caught her eye wasn't in the article. It was the photo. In the background, near the edge of the crater, was a manhole cover glowing faintly red. And at its edge stood a shape. Blurred. Half-shadowed. Tall. Thin. Watching. She dropped the paper. Her phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. No contact name. No photo. "You're walking too slow." She froze. The lights dimmed again. From the wall, near the baseboard, a crack began to spread outward, quietly, surgically. A smile carved in the concrete. Elena stumbled backward. It wasn't a hallucination. The walls were changing. Elena stared at the crack forming in the wall near the floor. It wasn't jagged or natural, it was too deliberate, a thin, curling line like a blade tracing a grin into the concrete. The wall itself pulsed slightly, as though the building were flexing. She backed toward the hallway, shoes crunching over the dropped newspaper. The lights in her apartment dimmed further, not flickering now but holding at a sickly amber hue. Shadows gathered in the corners, thick, viscous. She grabbed her coat and bolted. Down the hallway, she pounded on Rizzo's door. No answer. She tried again, louder. "Mr. Rizzo. Are you home?" Nothing. Then, from inside, came a slow, dragging sound. Like something heavy being pulled across the floor. She stepped back. The peephole on the door went dark, as if someone, or something, was standing right behind it, staring through the other side. She didn't wait to find out. Elena ran for the elevator, jamming the call button again and again. The hallway stretched around her like a throat. Lights popped one by one overhead. Ding. The doors opened. And inside was floor 14. Not the lobby. Not any floor she'd ever seen. The number was carved crudely into the metallic panel, no button, no light. Just a dark 14 scratched where a blank metal plate should be. Elena stood there, paralyzed. Then the doors began to close. Her instinct screamed yes and no at the same time. But before she could decide, a sudden scream echoed down the hallway behind her. A low, wet, human scream, Rizzo's voice. "Help me. It's in the walls." She turned just in time to see the door to his apartment burst outward, not off the hinges, not shattered. It simply peeled open, as though something had pushed through it from inside. The interior of his apartment glowed with that same pulsing red light. And then, silence. "Mr. Rizzo," she whispered. Nothing answered but the creak of shifting floorboards and a faraway hum. The elevator door dinged again, closing now. She dove inside, slammed her hand against the closed door button, and as the door sealed shut, she saw it. A figure crawling out of the baseboards in Rizzo's room. Its arms were too long. Its skin the color of dried cement. And its head turned slowly toward her, not with a face, but with a wide, seamless surface stretched tight, like it had been stitched over where eyes and a mouth should be. The elevator dropped. Fast. Elena pressed the lobby button again and again, but the floor display remained blank. The only light came from above, flickering stead. Then the elevator stopped. Not at one. Not at any numbered floor. The doors creaked open, and beyond them was a hallway bathed in red light, the walls breathing in and out, slow and steady. It was not part of the building. This was below. Deep below. The city's true basement. The hallway beyond the elevator was quiet, eerily quiet. There were no footsteps, no electrical hums, not even the usual groans of pipes or creaking beams. Just a low, rhythmic breathing sound. Inhale. Exhale. The The walls were concrete, but not the kind you'd find in normal buildings. These looked wet, darkened with something slick and reddish. Veins, or what looked like veins, pulsed faintly beneath the surface, stretching upward and into the ceiling like roots searching for soil. Elena stepped out, hesitant. The elevator doors slid shut behind her with a whisper. When she turned back, the call button was gone. She was trapped. The hallway stretched long in both directions, gently curving left and right in a spiral. She chose right, pressing her hand against the wall for balance. It was warm. Warmer than before. She moved slowly, taking shallow breaths, afraid of what she'd inhale. The air had weight. It tasted like metal and dirt and something organic. Her footsteps echoed softly, as though the space beneath her feet were hollow. Soon, she passed a door. It wasn't marked, just a rusted iron slab with a small window at eye level. She peered through. Inside was a room made entirely of stone. In the center stood a single chair. Tied to it was a man, gaunt, skin pale gray, his head slumped forward. At first, she thought he was dead. But then his head twitched up. His eyes were stitched shut, but he whispered anyway. "It hears you. It knows you." She gasped and stepped back. The man continued, louder now, his voice shaking. "The city's not built on dirt. It's built on skin. They fed it bricks and steel until it grew teeth. Now it needs more." His neck jerked. "It's hungry, girl. And you're at the center now. You woke it." Then, with a horrible crunching noise, his chest caved inward, imploding as if sucked through his spine. The lights overhead blinked out. She ran. The hallway spiraled downward now, deeper and deeper into the gut of whatever this was. The breathing got louder. Walls began to sweat. The floor shifted beneath her boots like muscle twitching. Suddenly, she turned a corner and entered a massive chamber. The air here was heavy. Choked. The ceiling stretched high above her, lost in red fog. The walls were covered in carvings, symbols she couldn't read, etched in rows. Some pulsed with a faint greenish glow. Others dripped. And in the center of the room, suspended by thick tendrils of rusted pipe and sinew, was a heart. Not metaphorical. A real, massive, black and red heart. Beating slowly, with each pulse sending vibrations through the floor. Thud. 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 It didn't need wires. It didn't need life support. It was life. For something far too big to see. Something beneath the city. As she approached, it pulsed faster, recognizing her. Calling to her. A deep voice, not spoken aloud but felt inside her own mind, said, "You see me now. You belong to me now." Elena stumbled back, heart racing. The city had a core. And it wasn't steel or stone. It was alive. Elena didn't scream. She couldn't. Her throat felt constricted, like the air itself refused to carry her panic. The chamber was too vast, too dense with heat and silence. Her breath came in short bursts. Sweat clung to her neck, but it wasn't fierce sweat, the air was damp. Saturated. Like the city's lungs were exhaling all around her. The heart pulsed again. Thud. The walls rippled with it. She turned to run back the way she came, but the hallway was gone. Or maybe it had never been a hallway at all. Behind her now stood only more wall, pulsating softly, like a wound sealed shut. "No," she whispered, banging her fists against it. "No, no, no." From behind her, the voice returned, inside her, not through her ears. "You all walk. You all press down. You feed me with movement. With noise. But some of you, slow. Stop. Listen. Those who listen, sink." Elena gritted her teeth, backing away from the wall. "What are you?" The chamber dimmed. A dozen overhead lights went black one by one. "I was born of foundations. Steel. Stone. I rose with your towers. I grew with your grid. And then they forgot me. Built over me. So I waited. Pipes overhead creaked. From the far end of the room, if there was an end, something began to descend. It wasn't a person. It wasn't a machine. It was a cage. A cube of rusted metal and old subway turnstiles welded into a hanging prison. Inside, suspended by wires and tendons that looked painfully organic, were people. Or what used to be people. She recognized one. George. From 1303. His lips moved weakly. One of his arms was fused to the bars, his fingers sunk into the mesh like roots into soil. Elena, he rasped. You shouldn't have listened. Behind him, more faces. The painter from 1301. The mother from 1306. Even, God, Rizzo. His head lolled to the side, eyes open, mouth trembling. What happened to you? Elena cried. George's face twitched, trying to form a word. It needs stillness. Silence. It feeds on it. We stopped moving. The cage groaned and began to descend toward the beating heart. No, she shouted, running forward. But the pipes above coiled like snakes, descending around her, blocking her path. They pulsed in sync with the heart, and one of them brushed against her shoulder, warm and wet. The voice again. You see. You stay. You sink. Suddenly, something shifted behind her. The wall she had banged on before peeled open, not like a door, but like lips parting. A way out? Or another trap? Elena didn't wait to find out. She darted through the fleshy opening, heart pounding, leaving behind the cage, the heart, and the cries of the still living. The city wasn't just swallowing people. It was choosing them. Elena sprinted through the opening, its walls narrowing around her like a collapsing throat. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. Her hands skimmed the walls for balance, brushing over patches that pulsed, others that shivered at her touch. Eventually, the passage widened into what looked like a tunnel, half sewer, half service corridor. Old subway tiles lined the walls, cracked and coated with grime, their original white long since stained yellow and brown. She saw symbols etched onto them, crude circles with eyes inside, spirals that made her stomach twist to look at, and tall, thin humanoid figures drawn without faces. She slowed. Everything smelled like rot and iron. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped. She found a rusted stairwell and climbed, hoping it would lead somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't bleeding concrete. At the top was a door. She pushed it open and emerged into an abandoned maintenance station. Dim fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Metal lockers lined the walls, each labeled with a number, L1201, L1202, L1203. She recognized the structure now. She was under the subway. A level few people ever saw. As she walked forward, something crunched underfoot. It wasn't glass. It was teeth. Dozens of them, molars, canines, incisors, scattered like gravel across the floor. Elena gagged, stumbling back. There was movement in the shadows. A man stepped into the flickering light. Not a monster. A real man. Gray beard, hard eyes, wearing a patched MTA uniform. You're not supposed to be down here, he said flatly. Elena gasped. Please, you have to help me. There's something down there. It's alive. It's feeding on people, my neighbors, there. He held up a hand. I know. She froze. He sighed and sat on an overturned bucket. You went too deep. What does that mean? The man rubbed his eyes. You stood too long. You listened too hard. That's how it finds you. Elena moved cautiously closer. You know what it is? He looked up at her. You think cities get big on commerce? On industry? No. Cities grow because something below allows them to. If it likes the noise, the rhythm, the chaos, it lets the city build above it. But when it's not fed, it feeds itself, Elena whispered. He nodded. We've been managing it for decades. The Department of Urban Depths. Most people think MTA workers are just keeping the trains running. Some of us keep it sleeping. She stared. That cage, it had people. They're still alive. His jaw clenched. They won't be for long. Elena stepped forward. Then help me save them. He looked at her for a long moment, then opened a locker. Inside was a strange device, part radio, part tuning fork, part weapon. He handed it to her. It's tuned to the city's bones. You want to reach them? You'll have to walk through the marrow. Elena stared at the strange device the old man had handed her. It pulsed softly in her hand, its surface warm, like holding a piece of living flesh disguised in wires and copper coils. It's called a tone lance, he said. It doesn't kill it. Nothing does. But it vibrates through the city's underlayers, confuses it. Buys you time. What happens if I don't use it right? What happens if I don't use it right? He gave her a look. Then you'll stop moving. And you'll be swallowed. Elena tucked the lance under her arm, swallowed the rising dread, and followed him through the far end of the maintenance station. There, hidden behind a false panel, was another tunnel, far older than anything she'd seen. The bricks were older than the city. She stepped inside, her boots crunching over something soft and brittle. She didn't look down. How do we get to them? She asked. They're in the nest. Where it keeps the still ones. They moved downward, deeper into the belly of the earth. Pipes jutted out of the walls like ribs, leaking a dark, syrupy liquid that hissed on contact with air. At times, they passed windows, small porthole-sized circles looking into rooms filled with black fog. In one, she saw shadows moving behind the glass. People? Reflections? Or dreams left behind? The deeper they went, the more the walls changed. Gone were bricks and steel. Now the tunnel resembled an esophagus, layers of something too soft to be rock and too wet to be cement. The very air seemed to press down on them, compressing time, thinning gravity. The old man, who still hadn't told her his name, lit a flare and handed it to her. Don't let the light die. What happens if it does? He paused. Then you'll hear the song. And once you hear it, you'll forget how to leave. They pressed on. Soon, a vibration rolled through the floor. Not a tremor, but a pulse, like the earth was sighing. That's it waking, he said quietly. They came upon a passage carved from its inner walls, leading to a large cavity. The light revealed horror, dozens of people sealed into the walls, faces half submerged, skin pale and waxy. Some of their eyes fluttered weakly. Others wept silently. One of them was George. Another was the woman from 1306. Elena approached, tears rising in her eyes. They're still alive. The tone lance pulsed stronger in her hands, sensing proximity. You'll need to use it now, the man warned. Strike the core. Wake them before it sings again. Elena gripped the lance and moved forward. In the center of the chamber lay a new heart, smaller than the one before, but beating faster. It was birthing a new network of tendrils, wrapping around the trapped victims like ivy. She raised the lance. And the walls screamed. The walls screamed, not just a sound, but a pressure. It rattled Elena's bones and turned her vision white. The flare in her hand dimmed and hissed, the flame sputtering like it, too, wanted to flee. The tone lance buzzed violently. She clutched it tighter, staggering toward the heart pulsing in the center of the chamber. It was smaller than the one she'd seen before, more like a bud, she realized. A seed. If this was here, it meant the city was replicating itself, preparing more of these growths. More cages. More nests. She raised the lance overhead and drove it down into the tissue. A burst of low-frequency sound exploded outward, not through the air, but through the ground, rippling through stone and flesh. It was like hitting a tuning fork against the bones of the city. The heart convulsed, shrieking in a voice not made for human ears. Veins in the walls snapped. A wave of fluid burst from the cracks. From the walls, the sealed victims began to twitch. George opened his eyes, wide and fully lucid. "Elena?" She ran to him, tearing at the tendrils wrapped around his chest. "You have to fight it," she shouted. "It's trying to keep you still. Move, even if it hurts." I hear it. The song," he groaned. "It's inside my head, like a lullaby. It wants me to sleep again." The old man appeared behind her, hacking through a vein with a sharpened crowbar. "You're shaking it," he grunted. "But it won't let them go easy." Behind them, the air shifted. From the far wall, a slit peeled open like a vertical eyelid. From within, a long, narrow form emerged, humanoid in shape, but stretched like pulled taffy. Its face was a flat sheet of skin, but beneath it, something twitched. It moved with unnatural fluidity, arms dragging behind like limbs unformed. Elena stumbled back. "What is that?" The old man's voice lowered. "One of its splinters. Born when it wants to defend a nest." The creature hissed, a sound that was almost melodic. It stepped toward them, feet not quite touching the floor. Elena raised the lance again, pointing it like a weapon. The creature stopped. It tilted its head, curious. Then it sang. A sound like a siren's call in a tunnel. Beautiful. Irresistible. Her mind began to slip sideways, thoughts softening. She dropped to one knee. "Don't listen," the old man shouted. "Strike it again." With the last of her strength, Elena twisted the dial on the lance and slammed it into the ground. A second shockwave tore through the chamber. The creature screamed, a fractured, painful sound, and melted backward into the wall like wax. The tendrils around the victims retracted. People began to fall from the walls, gasping, collapsing onto the floor. She rushed to George and helped him down. "Is it dead?" she panted. The old man shook his head, crouching beside another freed captive. "It never dies. But you cut off a vein. That's enough, for now." Far above, a deep, wounded moan echoed through the layers of the city. Buildings, unseen above them, trembled on their foundations. The city knew what they had done. And it was no longer sleeping. The moan that rolled through the depths of the earth was not sound, it was pressure, radiating outward in a pulse that knocked dust from unseen rafters and made the tunnel walls tremble like gelatin. The air around Elena grew suddenly thick, like a deep-sea current had pushed through the underground. She looked up. The walls weren't walls anymore. They were closing in. "Elena!" George clutched her arm, eyes wild. "It's shifting. It's sealing us in." The old man, grunting as he helped another survivor to her feet, nodded. "We triggered the city's pain response. It's locking this part of itself down." "How do we get out?" Elena asked, heart racing. He glanced toward a rusted maintenance tunnel, barely visible behind a curtain of oozing pipe veins. "There. That shaft leads up toward the old power sublevels. But it won't be easy. It'll send something after us." Elena helped lift George and steadied him. His skin was pale, and his veins ran black just beneath the surface, faint signs of the city's corruption. She could see it in the others too. Whatever it had done to them, it had changed them. But they were alive. For now. They pushed through the dripping passageway, one by one. The corridor narrowed quickly, scraping their shoulders, forcing them into single file. The sound of groaning metal and shifting cement followed behind them, ever closer. As they climbed a staircase half swallowed by molten roots, Elena whispered, "What is this place?" "It's not just tunnels." The old man answered without turning. "It's older than the subway. Older than any city. This whole island was hollow long before people built on it. They just tapped into it. Laid streets and sewers on top of something they didn't understand." He paused, pulling a lever near the top of the stairwell. A rusted steel hatch above groaned open, releasing a gush of frigid air. They emerged into a forgotten control room. Dust blanketed every surface. Monitors lined the walls, flickering static. Blueprints were pinned to boards, some of them displaying neighborhoods that didn't exist anymore. Elena stared. "What is this?" "The original nerve center," the man said. "When the city first made contact. Back when they tried to map it." He walked toward a panel and flipped a switch. A dim red light blinked to life on the wall, illuminating a map of Manhattan, one layered in translucent grids. Strange circles covered parts of the city, parks, subway junctions, government buildings. At the center, marked in black, 13th Street core. She leaned closer. That was near her apartment. "Your building," he said, "was built on one of the deep roots. A vein. And it's waking now." The monitors flickered. Suddenly, on one of the screens, they saw movement, blurry black forms crawling upward through maintenance shafts. It had sent more. "Elena," he said, his voice calm but urgent, "you freed these people. Now you have to seal the breach." She looked back at the others, the survivors trembling in silence, holding each other. Then she turned to him. "How?" He stared at her, eyes dark and sunken. "You're marked now. It's following you. That gives you one chance." "One chance for what?" He handed her a small metal device. A detonator, crude and wired to something ancient. "To bury it again. Even if it's just for a while." Elena stared at the detonator in her hand, the weight of it far heavier than its wires and rusted shell should allow. It hummed faintly, a residual tremor, almost like a heartbeat. She looked up at the monitor again. The black figures, faceless, fluid, fast, were climbing. Hunting. She glanced to George, leaning against the wall beside her, sweat trailing down his brow despite the cold. "I'm not leaving you behind," she said. He shook his head, breathing slow. "You won't have to. Just finish it." The old man opened a maintenance door on the far wall. A shaft rose steeply, and from the distance above, Elena could hear the muffled sound of traffic. Faint honks. The normalcy of it hit her like a slap. Just beyond this hell, people were walking. Eating. Laughing. She could barely remember what laughter sounded like. "Hurry," the old man urged. "They're almost on us." Elena turned and climbed. Her fingers bled against the rusted rungs, every step a prayer the bolts wouldn't snap. The others, George, the freed survivors, stayed behind with the old man, who knew the cost of slowing her down. He didn't need to say it aloud. As she climbed, the shaft shuddered. Metal groaned. Somewhere below, a howl rose, one not from a throat but from an entire chamber, like the city itself had opened its lungs to scream. Elena emerged onto the surface. The night had broken into early dawn. A gray, sleepy haze hung over the skyline, and the sidewalk steamed from fresh rain. She stumbled out of a maintenance grate behind her apartment building on 13th Street. The city was quiet, too quiet. There were no birds, no cars passing by, just a heavy stillness that didn't belong in a place that never truly slept. She turned the detonator over in her hand, then looked down through the open grate. Just then, a face rose up through the bars. Not a person. A mirror of her face, skin smooth, mouth slack, eyes completely black. It stared silently up at her. She dropped the grate with a crash. And pressed the trigger. The street shifted beneath her feet. For a moment, everything, air, concrete, sky, paused, like the entire world took a breath. Then the ground roared. A concussive wave of air blasted from the street vents as blocks of pavement lifted and cracked. Dust spiraled upward. Windows shattered for 2 blocks. Power went out. Sirens howled in the distance, but they were late. A massive rumble beneath the earth signaled the closing of a door that had been left ajar for too long. And then, silence. Elena collapsed on the sidewalk. The street lights flickered back to life. People began to emerge from buildings, confused, looking around. No one noticed her lying there. To them, it had been just another gas main rupture. The city sighed, yawned, and moved on. She closed her eyes. Beneath the sidewalk, something still moved, faint, distant, like the last crackles of a dying fire. The city would heal. But the sound would remain. Just beneath the surface. Waiting for the next footstep.